Ludwig, what are the implications of the industrial metaverse for German industry, for European industry?
Well, first of all, let me say, I think there will not be one metaverse. There will be many metaverses, possibly even more than one inside one company. But it's not just inside a company, but the nice thing about this technology is that a company can connect with their partners, with their suppliers, with their customers ultimately on metaverse technology in order to become more efficient, to become ultimately more productive than they would be without it. So it's a great opportunity for European industry, for German industry to maintain their very strong standing as drivers of innovation in Europe, but to keep up with innovation both inside and outside Europe.
And Adolf, to make it a bit more concrete, we've seen a lot of announcements around this from the automotive industry. So why are the automotive industry heading down towards the industrial metaverse?
Well, I think it has to do with change. Modern vehicles are not necessarily equipped with a combustion engine anymore. That means components are arranged in a different order, different manner. The building of a vehicle is, I think, getting a new complexity. That means changing of supply is important. When does each and every component find its way to the production belt? I think that is a natural driver for the moment to look at it in a more holistic way. Second, I think suppliers are delivering not just a single part anymore, they're delivering an entire group, an entire ready confected battery, for example. So I think they're getting more and more part of this entire process and need to participate in this metaverse.
And from my point of view, I suppose the metaverse to me is kind of where we're headed. It's the amalgamation of lots of digital technologies. So we're digitizing a lot of things. And one of the things, if I may, you said to me earlier was that it's about speeding up decision making and making it more efficient.
I think it has to do with supporting decisions. What do I need in my platform to support specific decisions? So metaverse is not a thing in itself. It has to support, I would say, a decision process. Often, I think we neglect how decision processes today work, and I think it's dominated with, let's say, old-style tools, which are difficult to understand. If somebody puts a drawing of a technical part in front of each other, not necessarily everyone gets it straight. So I think in terms of accessibility, we are human persons. The eye is, I would say, our best sensor. We look at it. If it's presented in a 3D volumetric way, it's I think an intuitive way of understanding, and everyone is on the same page in no time.
So I think one challenge for that is, and Adolf was alluding to, different components being designed using different tools, that they come together on a platform where they can be meaningfully integrated and in a way work with each other on this digital twin. We have a platform for that in NVIDIA called Omniverse that we have started building. It's complete, you can start using it, but then it is not complete because you can build extensions to it, either customer specific or you can take some tools that we provide. And a big focus on our initial development for that was for automotive industry and the various contributors to that. It's not just the big OEMs, but this entire industry that has unique value chains that can benefit from that.
Well, I've been dabbling with Omniverse, and as you say, it's a platform for interconnecting. And if I may, because a lot of people would say, hey, the automotive industry has been digitalizing and doing 3D designs for years. There's a lot of established players. So people would say, well, is Omniverse replacing all those tools or complementing them? So how do you answer that to your colleagues in the automotive industry?
Well, open one of those specialized tools, you see it has unique features to do a certain task very well. And so if you do construction, you need a lot of is it perpendicular, etc., constraints.
They're built for those use cases.
Yes, they're built for those use cases. This is their use case. I am pretty sure that they remain there. The other challenge remains. So if we want to see one of those situations where everything comes together, then we have parts from a vehicle, parts of a robot, parts of a factory. And going back to the original tools, each of these components are built and controlled with unique CAD solutions. Mm-hmm. They will stay, I'm pretty sure, but it needs a place where all that stuff can come together. Because I think loading in a building in a construction
they're using Bentley systems or whatever.
I think that this will not work out very nicely. So we see this specialization within the CAD tools itself. But in order to get all those existing artifacts, kind of in a brownfield way, together, I think we have a neutral ground, so to say, with choosing a format which allows conversion chains towards this. Mm-hmm. And in the Omniverse context, you also hear this term nucleus. This is basically the place where those artifacts find their place. They can come together. You can collaborate on top of them, and just think about the massive amount of data of a complex scene. It is an artifact of multiple people, mm-hmm. and it is never constant. So collaboration is a must, in my opinion.
Well, I've seen demos from yourselves at GTC and whatever, where people are working on whatever their tool of choice is for their job. They update the 3D asset, the model, mm-hmm. and in real time, the new version appears in Omniverse, but it's pulling in models from other tools. So I get the holistic view, the one version of the truth.
What's really critical for that is that standards are established or standards are deployed. And two of the most important ones that we support with Metaverse are OSD for the description of a scene, mm-hmm. and MDL for the description of materials. It's our material definition language, incidentally developed here in Berlin in our local lab, and it helps ensure that materials that are applied to a piece of engineering, let's say a fabric or a leather or whatever, looks the same and behaves the same, no matter what structure it is applied to and what the light situation is that it is exposed to.
That interoperability and the physics models that it behaves the exact same, because then I have true interoperability. Right. Now, if I may, Ludwig, people will have seen the announcement you've had with BMW and with Siemens, with yourselves and Siemens on the Freyr Giga Arctic, and people look at that and they go, oh, the art of the possible is incredible. What about the small, medium companies? When they look at what they can do, what do you say to them? Do they kind of go, oh, that's only for the big guys? Or?
Well, this is absolutely not only for the big guys. And if you look at a lot of these industries that we've been talking about, both automotive, electrical engineering, you mentioned BMW and mm-hmm. Siemens, they have an ecosystem of partners. They have suppliers that, as Adolf said, they're not only supplying nuts and bolts, quite literally, but sub-assemblies. So they've become pretty sophisticated suppliers and, in fact, partners. So they have to work with these tools as well, and they can. And what we've seen is a new opportunity for many small and medium businesses to engage there, because the cost of initial investment or initial engagement with a new technology like Metaverse is not as exorbitant as it may seem, or as it used to be when you switch from one manufacturing technology to another, because so much of it is nowadays implemented in the cloud, and you don't have to pre-invest a lot in hardware, for instance. You can just rent it. The one thing you have to invest in is to skill up the people that need to work with it. And much of that, I think, is a generational shift that takes place anyway. So hire better, hire smarter for your next technical evolution, and the rest will fall into place.
Well, we were chatting earlier, and you look at some of the virtual factories that are there today for people looking at virtual commissioning, and then some people will look at it and they'll kind of go, it's a nice animation, but it's like I go that you're missing the point. It's about the simulation, and you mentioned the 3D everything's a 3D object. It's not just a nice video.
It's nice that you bring this up, because recently I had a very similar observation. It still is a 3D object. If we debate on there's a more ideal placement of various things, we can go straight in the scene, and you can say, articulate your opinion and basically move an object right away, and I can do the same. And at the end we can find a consensus together, which one we take as the new baseline and move forward. So everything still is a 3D asset, which is fascinating, because then I have certain degrees of freedom, for example, of placement, of rearranging stuff. And look in modern factories, this is important. The AGVs which are driving around, they need to be coordinated, they need to master the situation as well. And there are a couple of, quite a significant amount of those AGVs and other semi-autonomous things, and they need to be supported in building and sometimes in pre-training.
Well, and when you have your one version of the truth and you can move things around, you can reconfigure production lines in a fraction of the time, besides years ago where you have to go back to square one and start again.
The what-if case is the thing here. So it was never easier to say, what if I move this to the side, or do I need to wrap my production line around here or at this phase? And so this is we build those models to understand our degree of freedom, what we later have in the physical world. We model those environments so that we understand the degrees of freedom, what we have in the physical space, and to understand what is the cost of change later on.
Now, here at NVIDIA, billion-dollar question. Where does AI fit into all of this? Because we talk about all the different enabling technologies and digital twins and simulation and Omniverse. Where does AI fit in?
Well, talking about simulation, we're seeing a lot of opportunities for the AI-supported analysis of sceneries, of scenes, of events.
I think it's that there are, in the meantime, obvious cases. For example, how does this AGV robot, what we just talked about, how does it find its way, detect an obstacle? And now all of a sudden this information gets more or less for free. Because, for example, if you look at the data sets, what you can generate out of these 3D assets.
Synthetic data.
It's amazing. And synthetic data generation is the key in here. And that's all of a sudden a side product and out of this one. So I think the more data you put in, the more value also the other data gets, because it's kind of a telephone effect, right? If I have a telephone as well, you have additional value. But
network effect.
Yeah, and so synthetic data generation is a very obvious one. We also use synthetic data generation, for example, to detect parcels, right? For logistics, it's an integral part.
Well, I've seen people in the energy industry creating synthetic data to train drone software, for a better word, to be able to detect rust and corrosion on transmission lines, as opposed to getting 10,000 photos. They were just generating more and more. So I'm guessing, and with AI, I think we haven't figured out all what it can do. So it's a question of people experimenting with it and going, ooh, we can use this for what if, for scenario, for simulation.
Well, another area that we're working with is with the German railroads on a simulation, if you want, of ultimately the entire railroad network, and simulating what happens if, for instance, some object obstructs a railroad track.
So a particular line, what's going to be the implications?
Or let a suitcase fall onto the track in a station. That's a scenario that does happen, every once in a while when you have tens of thousands of kilometers of railroad and people there. So to simulate a scenario like that, or the impact of weather on the operation of a railroad system, is something that combines actually another use case of AI-based simulation with essentially an industrial operation, which is the railroad. So we see actually many opportunities for companies large and small, and public infrastructure in this case, to benefit from that.
So it's the what if scenario planning. So one last question to both of you, and I'll start with you, Adolf, if I may. When companies come to you and they go, okay, I've seen what the big guys are doing, whatever, what do you say to them? They go, where do I start? What are your words of wisdom?
So if some of those potential customers come to our place, they have an idea what this sort of technology helps them. Often it is about virtual commissioning or similar to this. If we think how does that work, it is a use case which is inherently driven by data. So what is the data to make this use case true? And that is always a good starting point for a minimum viable product, so to say, or for something where we want to take a decision on. And so in my team, we mostly do care about data conversions and pipelines and how to bring that stuff to life. And it's an exciting discipline, and also we have a very good starting base there, because we need some sort of converters to just basically bring everything together. And yes, it's data driven. When you define the use case, it's clear what you need, and then you can say, if I have this scene available there, then I can accelerate those and those decisions in a, let's say, collaborative manner, more quick. So that's usually the starting point.
So you identify the different data sources that are there. There might be different silos. You can now start pulling those in with the connectors into Omniverse, and you end up with the one version of the truth.
Yes. Use case, data, users who benefit from it.
Yeah. I'm a technology guy, and it's like, look at the cool technology, but unfortunately I still have to find customers that buy technology for technology's sake. It's the back to the business case. And if I may, when you're chatting with customers and they go, where do I start? What would you say to them? Or they probably already started?
Well, many have started, others are wondering, and I would say this is your opportunity to start small with an experiment, with just a part of a sub-assembly or something to actually learn yourself how you can benefit from a metaverse-supported production process or application. And then another thing is, look at your environment, especially at startup companies that are in the space that may have clues for you to actually use on an industrial scale. And so we at NVIDIA are running a global program that we call our Inception program, and there are in Germany alone more than 400 companies. I believe in Europe it's more than 1,000 now that are registered there. That's an opportunity where we try to match up some of them with industrial size use cases, and that's a good opportunity to also understand sometimes the motivation of next generation skills and profiles and how they can contribute. There's an example, for instance, of a small company in southern Germany that has been working with a local technical training college. I learned about them at the Hanover Fair. I didn't even know they were using Omniverse technology for coordinating robots that are filling and emptying packages. And it's a company specializing in industrial packaging equipment, and for them this is sort of a natural next step in their evolution, together with, in this case, a college. And so I think there are many ways to get started.
Well, you mentioned earlier as well is that like the barrier to entry to start playing in that space and
Right.
bringing in new ideas, and some of the older folks like myself would be kind of like, oh, we never thought of that, and it's that mix and match, right? It's back to enabling, the enabling technology. You know, people that know me, I kind of go, whatever you think about metaverse enabling technologies, do not ignore this stuff, right? This is happening, and understand that there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Well, I must be older than you are, and I'm really excited about it. So,
Hey, good stuff. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.